day. My name is Pam Smith and I have the pleasure of working for the Parks Department. Today we're going to talk a little bit about pruning trees. This is particularly a good time to talk about that because they're dormant right now, and that typically works as when you want to prune them. Before we get out and actually work on the tree, I want to talk a little bit about tools. I think proper tools are extremely critical to doing a good job yourself at home. One thing I find particularly valuable is this pair of loppers. If you'll notice, they're pretty large. You want them larger because they're going to pick up where your hand pruners stop. So this will get probably 1.5 inch limb relatively easy. We all know that if we're pruning trees, we hopefully have limbs that are larger than 1.5 inch. So I would recommend a good pruning saw. This particular saw has teeth that go in opposite directions. So it makes for a good fast cut as well as a powerful cut, and you're cutting on both the push and the pull, which is very different from the saw you might have in your wood shop. It's well worth the investment. I think you're going to find a pair of gloves will come in particularly handy, especially when you're hauling the brush. I prefer leather. Find a good leather glove that fits your hands. And then the hand pruner. If you'll notice, the hand pruner I'm using has a scissor action, not one with a flat edge that does an anvil. Those tend to crush the stem, and we don't want to crush the stem because it makes for a wound that's more difficult for the tree to heal itself. So be very conscientious about which type of pruner you get. Mine's a nice small one, it fits my hand. Go out and try them and see which one fits your hand. Also, as a resource after this, you might go to Aggie Horticulture. They have a great article on pruning trees, shrubs, and roses. Aggie Horticulture is good for a lot of references. I keep it bookmarked on my computer. You might consider that as well. All right, let's go actually see how we prune that tree. All right, welcome to the other side of the creek. We're going to work on this vitex today. This is a small ornamental tree, and probably smaller than some of the ones you're going to be pruning in your yard, but also very typical of a crepe myrtle. But you're going to find it's got the same type of structure, it still has branches, and I can still show you some very important pruning principles and techniques. So regardless of what tree it is you're pruning, the first thing you want to do is to stand back and you want to look at it, because you only want to prune off the things that are dead, diseased, crossed and rubbing branches, and then a little bit of minor shaping. You're not really going for what I'm going to call is the broccoli look, where you end up with all the leaves at the top of your trunk. That does a very poor job of distributing the wind load, and that's when you're particularly susceptible to storm damage. So I'm going to look at this tree, and first thing I see standing back is that probably the top 2/3 of the leaves are actually in the top 2/3 of the tree. That's ideal. You want that kind of proportion, again, to distribute the wind load so you minimize your storm damage. So I like the way that is. The other thing that I'm going to tell you to do is I think you need to walk completely around the tree and check it out and see what you can see. Get a good overview. Because once you prune something off, you're not going to be able to put it back on. So as I'm walking around, I noticed that we have a limb right here that most of the branches and foliage seem to be in that bottom third. It's the top part of it is fighting with this stuff up in here. So I would remove that. And I'm going to use a pruning saw to do that. This is true of a much larger limb as well. So one of the things is, if you notice right here, we have what we call the branch collar. That's very important. You do not want to cut back in there. If you can see kind of that ridge of bark right there, so you're going to come in here and you're going to cut like this, okay? You don't want to make this super flush cut, which just makes it smooth there, because you'll see that the wound would be much larger and take a longer time for that tree to heal. The other thing is, if I just go in here and use my saw and cut, I run a risk that this limb will fall down and strip the bark down the trunk of the tree. So I don't want to do that. So we always recommend making a 3-part cut. And so you would do that by coming in here making your cut. See how nice that saw cuts? Removing that. You want to come in here and make an undercut. And what that does, especially on larger branches, it prevents it from stripping down the side of the trunk. And then come in and make your final cut. And so now I have a nice cut. The tree's going to be able to heal properly and quickly. One of the questions I often get is, do I need to use pruning paint? My recommendation, and other arborists will also recommend this, is not to use pruning paint. Pruning paint tends to inhibit the cambium right here from going back and healing itself, so leave it open. One exception would be if you had storm damage to any oak between February and July, then you would use the pruning paint. That helps prevent oak wilt from spreading. All right, so I took that one off, it was below. Let's come over here, and I see quite a bit of dead stuff. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to prune that out. I'm going to do the same thing in terms of making my cut. I'm going to try to get back in there and get it where I have a good cut, not too close into the branch. I'm not going to try to get into the trunk, but I am going to get it flush. If you leave that stub there, the stub most probably is not going to resprout, and if it did, it would not be desirable growth. The other thing is that stub will also tend just to die and decay, and it takes a long time for the tree to cover that wound. So I'm going to come in here. I have crossing branches right here, so I'm going to open that up. If you can see, this branch right here crosses over as well. And then I just have a little stub there. I'm going to remove that. Again, I've got some encroachment, so I'm going to come back here. Notice that I don't come in here and prune there. I take it all the way back to the point where it joined the next branch so that I end up with a pretty tree and nice structure. You might say, well, are you going to cut off all those seed pods? Not going to worry about it. On crepe myrtle, not going to worry about it. This tree will come in and bloom just beautifully next spring without all that work. And I really don't want to see anybody going out there and whacking a crepe myrtle like that. That is terrible. Please don't do it. It's called crepe murder. All right? So I'm going to do a little bit more trimming, repair what I just did. Let's see, I've got 4 branches coming out of this one spot. I'm going to look and I'm going to evaluate and I'm going to see which one is going to serve me the best in the long run. So I'm going to take this one out below it, this one above, that one there. Now see how I have opened this tree up without doing any heading back cuttings? Now see right here I got some rubbing, so I'm going to probably come in here and take that off. I've opened it up, and now I've got some good structure, but I have not stripped it because I still want stuff growing in the interior. I would leave that one there, maybe take that little one there. I don't want all of my foliage on the tips. I want it throughout the canopy of the tree. The other thing that I would encourage you to do is to only prune trees yourself that you can reach from the ground. Now you can get a pole saw so you can extend the reach, but I really would not advise homeowners to go out and prune their own trees from a ladder. I have a good friend right now who has a back injury from doing that. It's just not worth the money you think you're saving to put yourself at that risk. So I'll prune this tree, I'll finish it up, and then next summer when this particular variety starts blooming, it will look gorgeous and healthy, and it'll have a nice form to it. I'll see you next time in the garden.